Welcome to the LeaderImpact podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world, dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make the show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. If you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Duncan Reed. Throughout the last 25 years as an executive in the electronic manufacturing services industry, Duncan has had the opportunity to lead and be part of some amazing teams. The EMS industry is known for its high growth and competitive nature. As such, Duncan learned early on how critical a strong leadership team is to creating a healthy organization. As a principal at DR Consulting, Duncan's passion is to help leadership teams develop healthy organizations, which are great places to work and therefore outperform their competition. He is also on the founding advisory board of the Trinity Family Wealth Advisors. Duncan lives with his wife, Anna Marie, of 35 years in Richmond Hill, Ontario. Welcome to the show, Duncan.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to be here. So I'm going to add to your intro because I read on LinkedIn, because that's where I go. It says you're a certified working genius.
There you go. I'm certifiable, I guess. That's what it means.
Certifiable. Well, it is nice to see you again. I know we had met at a summit earlier this year, so it is nice to have you back.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about you. A little bit about your journey. So we will begin, if that's good with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow. So you want me to just go over a little bit of my journey, like my history and that kind of thing?
You know, I want to hear a little bit about your professional journey and how you got to where you are today. And really, it's about those pivotal moments or those turning points in that journey that sort of propel you or move you forward or move you back. I don't know. So, yeah.
So so the last 25 years I've been working for well over 30. And so engineer by nature. I went to Queen's way back when and got my engineering degree and worked for a big corporate company, Praxair or Union Carbide at the time, and lived in Edmonton out your way, a little past you. And and grew up in that industry. My brother started a company called Creation Technologies with a bunch of buddies out of school back in the early 90s. And they had the normal growing pains, and then it took off through the 90s. The electronics industry really took form, and they grew pretty fast in the Vancouver area. And then they opened a location in Toronto or Mississauga in 98, I guess. And I joined in 99. So it was like 30 people, and I didn't know much, if anything, about the industry. And then it took off. So we went from 30 people to over 400, I think, in 3 years. So it was crazy growth and great learning. And it was what they did early on is they let employees buy into the company. And if you're going to take a senior position with the company, which I did, it was kind of all in. So I took all my RSPs. And I even borrowed some money from him at the time, and went all in. So,
wow,
crazy regrets. I think about 3 or 4 months into it, thinking, "Oh my goodness, what did I do?" Because you couldn't just leave. It wasn't a liquid investment, so to speak. So, but probably the best decision I ever made. The company grew. We got an equity partner in 2007, but I started leading a division in the Markham area. And just to give you a sense of growth. So over the 20 years, the company grew from, I think it was like 50 million in sales at that time, but most of it was out on the West Coast. And then we organically grew, like I said, for the next 3 or 4 years. And by the time I left the company in 2019, it was, I think, 750 million in revenue and about 3,000 people. So, and it's still going strong today. Great bunch of people still working there. But there was a lot of pivotal moments in there, as you can imagine. And I think some of those big ones were just realizing that you can't do it alone. And that might sound obvious, but having, I think my epiphany was I remember I kind of got into my role because the guy I was reporting to just said, this is too much. And he actually swapped roles with me. And it was his idea, not mine. And, uh, and then I remember thinking at one point, I got to hire people that I'll want them to swap roles with me. And that was a pivotal change for me. So when you hire people that way, obviously you listen to them really closely. And a lot of those people are still friends and doing great. Some are still with creation, and some are doing their own thing elsewhere. But that was a pivotal moment for me. That was probably the biggest one.
So going back to, you cashed in all your RSPs and borrowed money. I can't imagine that. And well, I can't. And I can't imagine my husband coming home and saying, honey,
Yeah, yeah.
like, can I
Actually,
just,
Anna Marie
how,
was pretty good about it. She
wow.
kind of, yeah, and it was, I mean, it was early on, but it was a lot of money, yeah,
Yeah.
but it worked out. And the people that ran the company, including my brother, just very conservative in nature, because I think the problem with the industry was at that time, a lot of companies went for it. So they had a big opportunity, and the details around it are you buy a lot of inventory to build your customers' products. So they have to be very financially stable because that inventory is really only good for them.
Right.
So you can imagine if you have all this working capital, and if a customer goes bust, you're probably going to go down with the ship. And we never took those risks. And yeah, but it was a lot of stressful times for sure. But doing it with people that you care about, that you respect, and that kind of thing, it was I look back at it with fond memories. But there was there was sweat on my brow for a lot of times through it for sure.
I guess so. So you
Yeah.
talked a little bit about you swapped jobs with someone,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then you talked about you had to hire people. And I believe you said you would hire people you would swap with.
Yeah. So I just remember thinking I would hire people with more experience
Okay.
and certainly more smarts than I had. And I think it was just, and then we got into this mode where we started learning together. So I don't know, you've probably heard of the Global Leadership Summit. We started doing that probably, and it was because it was inexpensive. It wasn't any, it was really good, but it was really low cost, a great way to get leadership training. And again, in this industry, we're hiring a lot of people, and so there's lots of dollars, lots of actually not a lot of customers, but you need a lot of people to build product, to help engineer it, to make sure it's good quality, to buy the parts that you're using to assemble the product. So a lot of work, people capital in the business, and so having good leadership structure and a good culture was
Mhm.
critical to the business. And I think the best part about going to the Global Leadership Summit is we went together, right? So you'd go to these, it was usually at a church, and but we do it once a year, and then my leadership team and other leadership teams around North America who went to this thing would share ideas, and we integrated a lot of this good stuff. And that's actually what I love doing now is helping companies be healthy and building strong leadership teams. I mostly use the table group stuff, the Patrick Lencioni stuff. That's the Working Genius is one of those. So I got certified in that, but that's a small part of it. So yeah, that's what I love to do now, because it made such a difference in my career to be able to specifically to learn together and have a team that pushed each other to a whole new level and cared enough about each other to make the team better than the sum of the parts.
Yeah. You commented about, the Global Leadership Summit, you would take your team and it's good to share it with the team. And you said that they were mostly at a church. So I think my question is more about the staff. How were the staff accepting going to a church to do a global
Yeah,
leadership summit?
that's a
I
good question. So I'm
yeah.
laughing because it was funny early on. So I'm a person of faith, um, and churches can be awkward sometimes, right? Because
Mhm.
they put out a different persona than maybe what you do at work, and that's what I love about Leader Impact. It's fairly transparent through that. but early on in the Global Leadership Summit early on was very churchy. It isn't now. It's very appropriate to bring business people to it. But back then, I think I remember holding hands with people and singing with some of the leadership team. So you can imagine, right? But it was a way to get away, and we would celebrate it. Like we'd literally when it was. And I think the first time we had to go far enough away that we stayed in hotels and stuff. It wasn't even local. But when it got really established, we would go to somewhere close to the office, and it would be a 2-day thing. And after the first day, we'd come back to my house for a barbecue and just debrief on it. And we would literally say, what out of these talks do we need to integrate in how we do things? We changed the way we did yearly reviews. We developed a really cool way to, we called it an annual partnership discussion. And it's still the best thing I've ever seen in an annual um, inventory of relationship, is what I'd call it, with the people that you work with. But yeah, a lot of that came out of these great teachings in there, and a big part of this, the table group stuff, 5 dysfunctions of a team, and really taking people through making their organization have a lot of clarity around why they exist and what they do and how they behave. That kind of thing is what I love to do now, because it makes such a
Good.
difference.
All right. All right. Well, our next question is about your best principle of success, if you have one, and if you can tell us a story that illustrates it.
Yeah, so I think I'd be repeating myself a bit, but it's that you can't do it on your own, and having a little bit of humility. I mean, I don't think of myself as a super humble guy, but I think I put myself in positions where I have to ask for help a lot, and certainly when you do that, I think people, what is it? Craig Rochelle says it really well. He says people want to follow a leader that's real, as opposed to one that is on a pedestal. Because I think when people see a leader learning, they're gonna follow along, because they want to learn as well. And that's been a huge part of my journey, is to have people around who have no problem saying, "Hey, that wasn't cool what you did in that meeting, or that you pushed too hard in this circumstance," and just have people that um, I did life with, as opposed to did work with, right?
Yeah.
So I was fortunate, I think, in most of my excuse me, in most of my career, to be able to have a lot of transparency between my work life, my family life, and my faith even. And I wouldn't ever consider myself as a person who goes out and preaches or anything like that. But I think it's just, Jesus just loved the people around him, and that was really evident. And I hope that's what people see me doing. So I think that's probably the biggest learning. But boy, I have a ton of stories where I've mucked up royally and had a team that picked me up, and probably the funniest story I could tell you is, we used to, probably to a fault, play practical jokes on each other. And we had pretty strong relationships with our customers, because we didn't have a lot of customers, but we were really an extension from these customers' companies. So we got to know them pretty well, but they got involved in practical jokes, and I probably took a few more of them than others. But I had a couple times where people did, they had a customer threaten the business to me, or something, like some big deals like that, and where they got super nervous about it. But we just felt, if you could have a strong working relationship with the people, and make it more about, again, doing life together all the way around, that it would be more enjoyable, and you would take the business more seriously. You'd own it. A big part of how we interacted with our customers and each other was, we wanted to feel and act like owners, and that was a huge part of what we did. I could tell you stories, but they're too long, I think. But yeah.
Uh, you know, as the principle of success, and saying you can't do it on your own, as a woman, I think sometimes it's hard to ask for help, because you're seen as weak,
Hmm.
and then you think, what will people think? And it is a struggle. Um, And as I listen to you, I know that it makes a stronger team. Like I know all the good things, but there's this little nagging of what will people think.
Yeah.
We read a lot of books in Leader Impact about that. And as women, it's so nice to come together and talk about that. We're not
Yeah.
alone.
And I think so. There's obviously a difference, and for obvious reasons, I can't fully relate to that. I just know that I've never followed someone that wasn't real about their successes and their failures, right?
Yeah.
And I think, even all those books that you read, most of them talk about that changing. The thing that caused a change in their life was failure, and what they did to get back on top of it, right? And I was fortunate. I had some, well, part of it, and I'm not saying I'm a champion of having women in the workplace and all that kind of stuff, but we just needed the best people, and it was hard to find people. So I think at one point I'd have anywhere from 6 to 10 people on a leadership team at a time, and more than a couple times half of them were women.
Yeah.
So, which wasn't, I don't know if that was reflective of the workforce or not, but it was just because they were the best. I mean, it was purely out of being selfish to get those people on that team, right?
Yeah.
So, but I hear what you're saying. I think that can be a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of talked a little bit about failings and mistakes, and obviously we know that we learn more from our failings and mistakes than our own successes. And I was wondering if you could share one of your greatest failings or mistakes and what you learned from it.
I think it, again, there's a lot of them. I think one of the ones that comes true is that I was really in relationships with the team in the early days, was not really being able to understand where people were coming from, and having kind of the emotional intelligence of reflecting on how, if I felt a certain way and I thought I was being true to what was right, I assumed everybody knew that, and that was a very bad assumption. So it was really using empathy and going through some difficult discussions with people that helped me um, be seen as a person who cared, but also helped me grow as a person, so I could really understand where those people were at. So in specific situations, I'd have people that I felt weren't performing, and instead of really being able to talk to them in a way that gave them feedback that we could talk it through, I think I had the assumption that they knew they weren't performing in a way. So so it just created more tension. So I think now I'm a lot better at just kind of entering that what would feel like a dangerous conversation, and have it out. Say, it feels this way. How are you feeling? And try and get everything on the table. And hopefully there's enough trust there that you can work it through. And in a lot of cases, man, the change in people's attitude and their ability to perform, and my ability to work with them, changed significantly. So that there's probably a lot of hardships through that, especially when you're busy, right? You're in a growing business, and it's not like you sit down at the end of the day and you relax and you think through every little conversation you had. I think it's just that slowing down and realizing how important that is, particularly when you get into a more senior role and you have more people that you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. The other one, just the other side of that too, is working with people that you report to. So I wasn't the owner of the company, and I wasn't the CEO. So I had to deal with a team of people that I was, running several divisions that reported into these people. And it's the same thing. Is there a good bit of trust? Am I showing them that I care about their roles and what they have to get through, or is it all about me? So just getting perspective and doing that has been probably where I've failed the most, but where I think what I've learned through the journey as well.
Yeah. Our group is reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, and we're
Yeah.
talking about vulnerability. And you can't be vulnerable with someone unless you trust them. So I'm thinking to what I'm reading right now. When you say that, it's you wouldn't have a team if you
Yeah.
didn't have trust, and you would. I
Well,
mean, you wouldn't have a
you
good
can't
team.
trust someone that's
Yes.
not empathizing with who you are and what you're going through, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty
Got to
hard anyways.
make that connection.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, I mean, you are a city chair of Leader Impact. You know that we, our group, Leader Impact, wants to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually for increasing impact. And I was wondering if you could share an example of how the spiritual makes a practical difference in your life as a leader.
I'm at, I think in my journey right now, I was going to say relate it to age, but I don't think it's related to age. I think it's just the journey I'm on right now it's so evident that me seeking to grow my relationship with Jesus in a newer way all the time. Our church is going through this thing called "Practicing the Way" by John Mark Comer. It's not by him, but it's just talking about being an apprentice of Jesus. It's trying to do what he would do, and it rings so right in a way that I think I committed my life to Jesus probably 45 years ago, and the journey I'm on now, I don't know. I simply tell people that my personal experience has been that with the relationship with Jesus, my life's better. I'm a better person through it, and my life is more full. So that's wherever it is. It's better than it would have been, and I think I think that it's a game changer for me. So, and how did it affect my professional life? Was in a huge way because it helped me. I think out of selfishness and about just thinking of myself, I would have blown people, just pushed people to the side, whether they reported to me or I reported to them. I just write them off if I didn't have understand what Jesus did for me. Right? It's that kind of yeah, they're a person. What's my role in this to do? So I think it affects everything I do now. That sounds a little super spiritual, I guess, but and it's not meant to be that way because I feel like I'm an infant on that journey in a lot of ways because I'm not great at a lot of stuff, but I just want to draw near to him
Yeah.
through it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it's
that's the
great.
best shot at it.
You said I don't know if it's the journey or the age, and that is a big conversation with I think in my group is things are shifting, and I say it's age. I'm getting smarter. I don't know, but it is the journey I'm on, and the people I continue to surround myself with, and I make those choices now. Maybe in the past it would be a group I had to be involved, or I mean, not that I had to be involved with, but it's children's group or a hockey group or you have to be involved. And now it's my kids are both gone out of the house and I get to choose.
Mhm.
I'm choosing my journey. So
Yeah, and that's
I got
interesting because
older.
I think we might be. I have two boys, and they're both in their 20s. One's a professional, and he's an engineer too, and he's doing his thing, and the other one's just finishing university. And but I get to hang around. Not only get to hang around with them, but I get to hang around with all their friends. And boy, I learned a ton from those guys because it's a different world now, and their perspective is well, they believe it's well informed, so they get to do, to put all that together. But yeah, I just, it's pretty fun to be able to talk to them about how my relationship with God has changed my life and how I'm fortunate that both my kids have the same faith in there and it's changing their life too. So yeah,
Well done, Dad.
yeah, well, I don't know.
So far
Yeah,
so good.
yeah, so far so good.
All right.
Exactly.
So I mean, we know that Leader Impact is dedicated to leaders having a lasting impact. So as you continue to move through this journey, as we just talked about, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
Yeah, that was one of the questions you threw at me, and I don't. I think I just want to be able, Jesus to say, hey, well done, my good and faithful servant, which is so far away from where I'm at. I just want to be able to do his work when I'm put in a situation to be able to do it. And I'm still learning. So I hope that I can stay on that path and keep my eye on him, because I tell people all the time now, it feels like there's so many distractions. It feels like, if you're in the wake of a boat and you stay focused and Jesus is in the boat, you're just staying close to that. And there's all these distractions trying to come in, and I see myself and others just getting distracted, and you leave the wake and you start going down, and for all the right reasons, but suddenly you're out in the waves, and it doesn't make sense. So I just want to stay in the wake. That's kind of my goal, and I hope people will see my desire to do that anyways, if not the full result.
So you're a boat guy?
I'm not. I have a cottage and I have a boat, so that's about the extent of it. I used to water ski when I was younger, so but not.
I get the analogy. I like boats. So our last question for you is, what brings you the greatest joy?
I think having good, deep learning conversations. I'm not the kind of guy that'll go to a party and talk about the weather. I'd probably be not a good party person that way, but it's just, even I drive my guys nuts, because my two boys nuts, because if they bring friends home, I just get into deep conversations with them, and I love it, right? And I'll talk about work and their careers, and hopefully the faith aspect will come into it, but not necessarily. It's just deep. So otherwise it's not worthy of time, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I love. I love to be able to do that.
That's awesome. When my daughter brings friends home, I just pepper them with questions.
Yeah.
And I know she's listening.
And so. How do they like that, Lisa? Do they like that?
I think they do. I'm like, I ask them, but it's engaging, right? It's being part of the conversation. It's welcoming them into your home. I'm sure your boys' friends love it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Fun for sure.
All right. So, well, this brings us to the end of our podcast, Duncan. I want to thank you for spending the last half hour with us.
Thank you.
That was pretty easy peasy, hey?
Yeah, it was good.
All right. So if people are listening and they want to engage with you or find out more about you, how can they find you, or what is the best way?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's the best way. It's the easiest way. So just find me on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy.
And that's Duncan Reed, double E. Reed.
Double E.
Awesome.
Double E.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Duncan, for joining us. It has been a fabulous half hour. I love being here. I just love being here, just to hear the stories.
Well, you're doing great. So keep up the good work. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. All right. Well, if you're part of Leader Impact, that brings us to the end of this podcast. But if you are part of Leader Impact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet part of Leader Impact and would like to find out more and grow your leadership, find our podcast page on our website at leaderimpact.ca and check out our free leadership assessment. You will also find on our webpage Chapter 1 of Braden Douglas's book, Becoming a Leader of Impact. You can also check out groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com or get in touch with us by email, info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or a review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us, and remember, impact starts with you.